Soup Chat, Fred Gardner, what's up, dog? Right on. Let's do this. Good morning. Good morning. I'm waiting on Neil to cruise in. I may have got my times wrong, but we'll see. We'll see what we got with him. But what I wanted to do was like a public brainstorming on how to do this Here Be Dragons thing. So I'm seeing the chats that you guys are dropping in. Hector, good to see you. Fred, thank you again. Crushing on that. But wanted to have kind of a record, and I might be typing, so you may hear me like blasting out typing notes for the Here Be Dragons thing. Let's see. General idea is that we had the rack mappers. I've got one charging right here. And we took those out to London and ran a Here Be Dragons contest. And the idea is that you have a helium mapper, and you send it, let's see. You take the data that it's producing, and it goes to the regular helium mapping, I think it's called API. And then it would also go to another place, probably TrackPack's thing, which is BFG Neil's thing, or maybe Hotspot, or maybe something else. Someone builds something else, however we make this happen. And then you can run a mapping game where you'd set it up in your city, and say like, hey, for San Diego, you get 10 points for being on the middle of the Coronado Bridge. You get 20 points for being on Coronado Beach. You get 100 points for being on top of Cowles Mountain, and you get 5 points for being downtown, or whatever it is. Let's see. Oh, Neil's coming in. Cool. Sweet. Let me just bring in the big dog. There we go. What's up, dog? You can hear me? Yeah, I'm assuming. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, there we go. Maybe I just have my volume down. Cool. So I was just going through the kind of the idea behind the whole game and figuring out like the really broad strokes, my first understanding of it, and then you and I had kind of wrapped a little bit about what it is and what it could do. But yeah, walk me through what you're thinking on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's primary game, right? That we can introduce on the network and help people understand the network pretty well, And I think that's the basis of it, right? And after doing the London event, it was so much fun for seeing the teams go out and do this thing. It's like, well, it could happen on a global scale or an event scale, and we can do different types of events and things. So I think it's worth doing, which is just so much fun. And then there's the upsides on the back of it, like we have active people checking the network. We have some really good information stats about areas and their coverage. Yeah, it's all good. So that's the basics, right?
That is. So there's a couple things that go into. Let me see if I can get my headphones plugged in. It's showing me that I'm not getting great sound on your side. I'm not sure. In the comment section, if you guys can hear Neil fine, great. If not, let's figure something else out. But I can hear you okay. Yeah, so there's like the basic part where you're like, oh yeah, points for getting on top of this mountain, points for getting to this place. And I think that part is like the first fun part. But then it becomes like, how do we make this useful for the network? And how do we make it repeatable? Like, how do we make it so someone who is, someone tech savvy can figure it out?
It'd be interesting in that, like.
Now, hang on a second. They're saying that your volume is low and echoey. It might be from me not having my stuff plugged in. But you're using your normal microphone, normal settings? Okay. Yeah, should be a little bit better now. Let's keep going. Sorry about that.
No worries. Should be a bit better now, hopefully.
Yeah.
So there's this opportunity for, like, say you went to an event and that event had a series of, when you go to a museum, you get those guided tours.
Yeah.
I think there's a big aspect to that of it, that you could, turn up to a site and someone could host their own game that, once you go through that, you win a prize or get score points for it and use it in a marketing term. You can make sure that, you're promoting your latest bicycle, for example. You could do a one that's like the quickest time to cycle around this path or things like that, and we can track that kind of thing in the game. I think it's important that this is one of the things Travis said to me, is that we don't limit it to one game type, that we allow people to create the kind of rules that they want to create. I mean, yes, the basis of it is visiting geofences areas, and once they've entered that area, they get the point for it. but what they do and in what order could be done as well. So you could plot 5 points, but then it could be a riddle to say, well, go to them in this order to win the prize, and things like that. Or there's a lot of talk like maybe a tag game, tag you're it, capture the flag or capture the hex, things like that, which I think would be really cool. So
Yeah.
we can have multiple game types, all on running on different ideas, which is pretty cool.
Love it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the tag thing is super cool, and that's something that like I'm trying to wrap my head around. But basically, like, you need to be in, let's say, like a res, and I guess you could define the resolution, the hex size. But you need to be in a res 8, or res 9, or res 12, or res 4 hex at the same time as someone else and tag people.
Yeah, and it could be closer than that as well. I mean, these trackers are pretty good, so you can get within a couple of 100 meters, and be, mark them as close enough to the other tracker to win the point of the tag.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be super. I mean, there's like a capture the flag game. There's all this stuff in there.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. I mean, capture the flag's great. I mean, it could be, you could run an event for your local friends, but at the same time, you could do, a big meetup once a month where it's pulling everyone together to kind of play a massive game, or yeah, just there's just so many options to it.
and then the other thing that we thought and talked about was adding in NFTs to it, which
Yeah,
kind of makes sense on the capture the flag side. Um, but just making it so, like, if you run, you do your bike path course and you're the fastest person around the bike path, and it's like some weird path, right? Because just going to a bike track, anyone can do that. But like, how do we use the strengths of helium to make this kind of fun?
well, it's kind of like on the route you wanna put in landmarks, like how Pokemon Go does it. There's gyms and Pokestops at every landmark, so
Yeah.
you can kind of get that information and create NFTs based on where they visited it. But I think like the real winner is like maybe there's a London NFT, and you have to go visit Big Ben,
Yeah.
Houses of Parliament, the Millennium Wheel, and things like that. And once you've done all of them, then you get the NFT kind of thing.
Oh, and I wonder if you could do on the Millennium Wheel if there's an altitude thing. So it's like, no, you got to ride the thing as well. You got to get up to
Yeah, you
100 meters
could.
high or whatever. Yeah.
You really could. I mean, as long as the thing detects altitude, then it's possible. I think that's a big point of it is that, if you're doing points or prizes or anything that's worth anything, and we have to be careful a bit about the device that we use, but generally, there's two methods for that. One, you control the devices, or two, you score the data to see if they're being accurate or not. So there
Uh,
is some anti-game into it, but it kind of falls back to this idea about secure mappers. Like,
yeah.
if we were to coat these mappers in resin, basically, I don't think it's resin, but if they were to try and take it apart, they would break the device, so they can't fake the information.
Right. It's
Um,
potted. I think that's the
Potted, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
technical term.
potted. But that would mean that you could then lead to say, well, maybe because we've got this thing locked down now, the top 10 scorers in a month receive a prize, or some remuneration for their efforts.
Oh, you know what'd be rad, Neil? Okay, I'm seeing the comments. Kenny, how would this work in smaller cities? And Grey Hat Guy. In fact, I'll see if I can bring that in. It says add to broadcast. I should be able to put this in. And I want to come back to that, but I had this idea. Like, Neil, what if you could, this is crazy, what if you could say some of the earnings from your hotspot miner go to the prize, right? Like, you somehow tie it so you're like, hey, whoever wins this, so like, make it so it's among just friends, and like, this would be one way to gate out gamers, is like you, me, Dave, like all the people you know and trust. We'd be like, hey, we're gonna run a worldwide thing. Like, what's the fastest you can do a bike lap where you have like 20 turns and it covers 9 miles or whatever it is? And we're like, hey, instead of putting up, dollars, is like, I'll give you 10% of my earnings for a month on a hotspot, and it would be like a fun thing between friends. I don't know that it would. Yeah.
Well, there's hash lock time contracts at the moment. I think Solana's got that similar kind of thing, smart contracts. So it could be possible to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a world of opportunity. I mean, it's one of the things we've always talked about in the past, that really, if you can secure the mapper and the device, then they are actually doing a reasonable job, scanning the network and seeing if it's legit where it is.
Yeah.
So in theory, that should earn something for that process of being done, right? You don't want to give people unpaid work on the network. You want them to be paid for a decent job, and if they are finding illegitimate hotspots, then maybe there's some way we can carve some sort of reward out for that activity. But to get to that point, you really have to be sure of your system.
Yeah.
The network has never wanted to do it, but we could build something on top that does reward it.
Yep.
And as long as we secure funding, then that funding could be spread out depending on what kind of people use in the app.
Oh, that'd be super fun. Super fun. Okay, cool. Let's see. Helium Kenny, how would this work in smaller cities? Kenny, I don't think it would be any different than a big city. You just say, I'm trying to think of like the small town of Taos, New Mexico. You just don't have everything as spread out. Or like maybe you're super adventurous in Taos or Big Bear or wherever, and you're like, hey, I'm going to put like a 30-mile course out and have people do it.
Exactly that. And like, your local town might have some sites that you want people when they come to that to visit. So you could list those 3 smaller sites. I think just to go over it, the general idea was there's a global game of something.
Yep.
But you can also run your own local events. So,
yeah,
he could set up his own event in his own area to have their own landmarks that they want, rather than us just assuming that something like that would work there. So you can have these meetups and say, right, I'm going to do an event today. It's going to be capture the flag, boom, and it's going to run for 24 hours. Let's score it and use it and have some fun.
Yeah, I think I'd had some like pictures of like that workflow, but basically you'd go to whatever it is, like mappers.trackpack.com or however, or Herbie Dragons or whatever it is, whatever the URL is, and it would say, hey, do you want to play a game that's already set up, or do you want to set up a game and be kind of an admin for your local area, or like some other button, right? And so
exactly.
If you're Kenny, I think Kenny, you're in New Jersey or on the East Coast somewhere. You'd be like, I want to play a game in New Jersey. If someone set one up, you can go play that game on your own and just run the course, or you can get your buddies together and be like, oh, I want to add, this user, this user, this user, and the 5 of us are going to compete, and we're going to buy a beer for each other.
And like Travis says, you could totally put a gentleman's agreement in place to to win some prizes for doing that, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do these massive events cross country if you really wanted to, but at the same time, you could just make it hyper local and just be like 3 or 4 spots.
Yeah. And then you got Grey Hat Guy, Mapper LARP. So what is LARP? Is like live action role playing, if I remember right?
Yeah.
D&D style. So I mean, this would be like incredible, but you could totally do this. And to give people an idea, because I've only got what is it called, tangential experience on this. Like, what do you think this would look like? Neil, sounds like you knew more about it than I do.
What, LARPing?
Yeah. I don't know anything about it. Well, I got one funny story, but you tell me yours.
Yeah, I've not got a funny story, but I'm just saying in general, like LARPing is good fun, and it could be really good that there could be some kind of battle mode, so that whilst you progress through the course, you have to do certain things or kill certain monsters to get past it to the next stage. Maybe when you kill that monster, it gives you the next location, kind of thing.
Oh, dude! So you could have like a hotspot be a monster.
And then you have to, every time you hear a piece of traffic from it, that's an attack against you. But at the same time, or something like that, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. I wonder if you could have like an additional thing. So you have the mapper, and I've got like 4 different mappers here. So I got the original one that I got this thing that I built at some point. Of course, I got the Glamos. I got the mapper I showed already. Whatever it is, like these are all the mapping options. But thinking about like, what if there's? Oh my God, this is so rad. What if there's like a mapping sensor that you can buy and build, and that's how you send traffic that is maybe separate than the mapping traffic, and you have like a battle. So like if you're playing tag, like that's how you tag the other mappers or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always reminded of there was a great game before Pokemon Go called Ingress, and that was sort of similar to everyone raves about it. AP's a massive fan of it. I didn't see it too much. I only saw a little bit about it. But it used your phone, and your phone would die forever because the amount of battery that it drains through. Or if you're a Pokemon Go player, I mean, I think it's a bit easier now, but when it first came out, you could only play a few hours on your phone because it just drained the battery.
Yeah.
But we've got devices that can literally last weeks or days, to play non-stop.
Yeah. So
if you had something like a tab in your pocket, you could join a global game of Claim the Hex. But at the same time, then you can join up to a local game and play both at the same time.
I got a fucking bunch of tabs here too. That's right. Dude, can I take these things apart and like reflash them or whatever? I think this is like my original Gristle King helium tab. It still seems to work. I don't see where it goes though.
There is pins on the board that you can connect something, but I've never got around to doing it.
Okay, maybe I can see if I can send some to Gray Hat and he'll tear them apart because that dude loves tearing electronics apart. All right, so let's see. We talked a little bit about a bunch of super cool ideas. And I think the general idea now is you could do it, super small. You could do it super big. So small city, big city. You could do it across continents. You could kind of collect hexes on continents would be one thing. So there'd be like a travel competition, which might be super cool. And then the NFT thing was cool because you can attach stuff to it, and then you could show it in a specific wallet or whatever. So there'd be like a global leaderboard, like who's done the most games, who's traveled the most distance. Yeah.
I'm always reminded of, like, when you meet travelers who traveled all over the world, they generally have a world map with a pin in it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
All the places that they've been.
They love
Well,
that.
here they're gonna have a collection of NFTs for all the places they've been. So it's kind of like just bringing it into the modern world rather than the map on the wall where you've got a digital collection of all the places you've been.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool.
Passport stamps for another one,
Yeah. And I think, one thing, there's a company, what is it called? The Helium Hotspot Art Company, is they could do NFTs for hexes or like certain places. And I wonder if I'm thinking about this, like paying for a game is like you pay $5 to play the worldwide game, and then you collect the NFTs that are in those hexes, and then some portion of that payment goes to them for creating the art.
Exactly, and if you're in a local area, like for the life of me, I've only just noticed it. It must have been there for months. In my area, I have a hotspot that's asserted its location wrong. Now I could go and map that, but maybe I don't have the time, so I could do an airdrop to some of those hexes around that area, and attract people to visit those areas to claim the funds and get the mapping data I want on the area to see how misasserted it is. If that goes back to that idea as well, if I'm a new business in an area that really wants to deploy sensors but there's no mapping data, I would have to walk around with a mapper all day. But here we could put a bounty in the area that people just go claim those hexes. So golden hexes or something. Once they go in it gets a prize. The second person gets a lower prize.
And the business could put up that bounty.
Yeah, exactly. Or if your Paleo Treats is running a special offer, you could put a claim an NFT for coming in that day.
Yeah,
and that's what prize. If they can get footfall from something that costs them nearly nothing, then they would love that.
Yeah, totally, we would. So that's a super cool idea. Is we also talked about having like a business tour. Like, so maybe I'd go to San Diego Chamber of Commerce and say, look, I think I can drive some pretty geeky tech traffic to places, and maybe we make it bigger and better. Like you do a tourist thing where you hand the tourist a tab and you're like, hey, bring this around, and it somehow interacts with an app on the phone and says like, here's the next place to go or whatever it is. And then you start driving traffic to businesses and you can track where everybody went and what they did.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's like two ways to really do that. We've got the positioning. This what Helium provides is proof of location that they've actually been there. But maybe they have to do other things on site, like maybe there's a QR code that they have to scan, or maybe there's BLE beacons about, so they know that they've gone inside and seen the one museum piece that they want them to see, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right.
So, but we could really, really lock it down so they get to set the route that they want and solve the problem they're trying to do, footfall or better tourism on the area, or show some of the wonderful things they're doing in their county, things like that. I think there's like a bit of business need for.
Yeah, totally. Let's see. So, that's super cool. So we could do that as well. I would think of like nature preserve stuff. Is like, oh, did you actually go out and check this one place or look at this one thing and make kind of a game out of it? We got this local nature preserve that I'm a supporter of, and they do like guided hikes and guided tours, and sometimes you'll get to go on private land that no one else gets to go onto. It's super cool, and you'd be able to collect a hex out there and then prove it by having mapped that area, as long as there's coverage.
Exactly, and you could do fun things as well. Like you could say, oh, this is a great spot to upload social posts in London, go here, and then tag this on Twitter with this great background and help improve the London tourist board. Things like that. So just exploring those ideas, and it's like I said to you, it's like we can do all of these things, but the most important thing is to get the minimum lovable product out, right? Get one mode out, one game idea, test it on a global scale, maybe select some of the most memorable locations and see how it goes. None of the winning points or prizes, but just to make sure that the love part is there, that people enjoy playing it, and
Yeah.
are inviting their friends to join too. But really, once we got to that stage, we can look around and see what's available to us. You know.
Oh, dude, so let's think about what that first game looks like then. I'm thinking of it like the spider game, where there's a center hex that's maybe a res 8 hex, and then there's 8 hexes around it at various distances that are like, oh, this is a res 12, so you got to be super precise, and this is a res 11 and 10, 9, 8, like whatever. There's more or less than 8 hexes, but like, so you see, oh, a res 4, I don't have to go to the center of that thing. I just got to cross the line, and maybe it helps. Remember, at the very beginning when everyone was crazy about what hexes look like and the borders of hexes and how it was all res
Yeah.
stuff. That might help
Yeah.
people understand that in a super cool way, where you're like, oh no, I don't even need to cross the line on what looks like the line on the map. I can be way on one side or the other.
Yeah, I think the first mode needs to be simple and a basic premise, but it
Yeah.
can be built up so much more from that. And I think
Yeah. Okay.
some sort of capture the hex thing would be great.
Yep.
As in, the person who spends the most time in the hex owns that hex, and for owning it, they could do something cool like maybe I'm always reminded of the 1millionpixels.com website.
Yeah,
where
that
you
guy
could
crushed
pick-
it. That was so awesome.
Yeah, well, let's do that across the hex map of the world, so that you can set your NFT. If you visit a res 12 and you're the one that spent the longest time in there, you set the NFT on that hex. But then if you collect all of the res 12s, then you might get the res 11 hex
Oh, yeah.
turned into NFT. Or then if you went and did the whole res 8, then you get the res 8 hex. So generally, we'd have a global map of people battling for turf wars almost.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's super cool.
Mm.
And a res 12 is what? I don't even know what it is. Like a meter or 5
Right.
meters across. It's super small.
Yeah, it's tiny. It's tiny. I mean, we'd have to work out the sizes, obviously, but
Yeah.
there's if you're working on a decent team, maybe you can get the whole res 4.
Oh, that's totally right. I forgot about the teams thing. Is that was one of the ideas? Like, oh, it's a bunch of us working together to do something. Like, I can get the Gristle crew. Like, hey, crew, we're gonna crush the world here.
Yeah, it's like there's a game on there's a kind of drawing game on Reddit there was as well, that anyone could choose any square and change the color of it. So there was like little teams that would make sure there's always a UK flag, or someone would really like something and the whole team would make sure that they were always colored like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that winning principle, because we know it works because so many people have done really similar things.
Yep.
Just in real life, and benefiting the Helium network at the same time.
Yeah, because it's all driving the data credits through, and it's so cheap to run those through that it's not a big deal. Let's see. Lee's on this thing that Fred likes, like dog rescues. So I think this is super cool. Is starting to think, how do you benefit? Like, how do you do more than just have fun? And you do something cool, like you visit all the dog rescues or tag all the shelters. You go around. I think it's the same kind of thing as like the tourist board piece. But you find something important to you and say, okay, hey, I want you to visit it. And then maybe there's an additional action that you do.
Exactly, and that action could really help a business depending on what it is, what their needs are. Like, dog shelter, having more awareness of where they are and the people that are, the dogs that are there. That could mean everything for them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you could make it fun too. Like, all right, post your whatever picture, kind of like we did for Here Be Dragons. Like, post your picture on Twitter and tag, Here Be Dragons and the dog shelter, whatever it is. So it's like, oh, that's proof that you were there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So we can verify that they were there by making them take a picture. So one of the routes could be, like we said earlier, go on the Millennium Wheel and take a picture from the top.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a bad example because it's a paid thing. We wouldn't want them to pay to do that. But, that kind of thing, like maybe there's a really famous spot where everyone takes their photos, or there's a famous house used in a movie.
Yeah.
They can take a picture of it. And
yeah, like the house from Top Gun is, 20 miles north of me. It's like, oh, I'm going to go take a picture in front of that.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay.
Or visit the dog shelter and get a photo with a puppy and tag the rescue center on social media or something,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah. No, I walk the dogs. I'm seeing Grey Hat guy say, let me.
Yeah, I was thinking that when she said about dog rescue centers, but I was just wondering, would they just let you walk off with a dog? But I'm sure some of them would.
I know, like locally here in San Diego, they've got whole like programs where you sign up and you're like, oh yeah, I'll come walk the dogs because they, if you're a dog person, you're crazy about this, just like we are. Like, God, they need a bunch of love and they don't get it in the shelters. But yeah, that'd be super cool. Maybe you sign up for something and do it. And I think a lot of this goes back to like, how do you integrate this into the regular world, right? It starts with kind of the geek saying, oh, I'm going to take my tab or my mapper and do this. But this is a really cool way to intersect this with the rest of the world, whether it's businesses or tourist boards or dog shelters or whatever, saying like, hey, this is how we want to do it.
Exactly. Great hat guy nailed it on the head. There are so many levels and depths to this. So we could go a million ways. Just kind of nailing something down to get it started and then grow it,
Yeah. So what do you think maybe that first thing would be or would look like? Would it just be like a 5-point map?
I think the quickest way to get something out there right now would be to something like claim the hex, because we could just map who's been in the hex the longest, who's had the most check-ins, and show the NFT linked on their account, so they could pick what the display icon is, and you just sum up when someone visits the hex who was the person who spent the most time there, and show that on the map kind of thing. The other option to do something really quick is to kind of get this idea up of setting an event of a certain amount of points and just visiting them in any order, but as long as you visited them. That's probably the other quickest one. I mean, in that respect, it's tricky because the people will have to sign up and set the things that we're visiting. Exactly, you could do a bar crawl as well.
Yeah.
You really could do anything. Your friend's stag do. We're going to go to visit all of these pubs. How far do we get?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see. The one thing, I don't know. I'm having people spend time in a hex. Like that gets unfun quickly, right? Like you're there for a minute, you're like, oh, this is cool, but by minute 7, you're like, I don't really want to win this that much.
It's fun because if you're in a small village, you'd be the only one claiming it. But then if someone drove through it, they'd ruin your picture. So you'd have to go back and reference it. It just means that we get lots of fresh data.
What about like the first one in, and it's like a 7-day reset?
Yeah, you could totally do that, or you could do something along the lines of battle a monster to claim the hex.
Yeah,
something,
Yep. Yeah, I like this million pixel site. So let's see. There's a couple other things to talk about on this. Is that like, how does this get done? Because it's super fun to sit here and just like jam with you and the crew on the chat section. But like, how does it get? Like, what do you need, or what needs to happen for this to work?
Really, we need help from people like designers or people that have had gaming experience, developing games before.
Yep.
UX developers is another one that's always a good one. That's something I lack massively. We have to outsource that TrackPack.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's people that want to put up events and things like that. If you've got time to help us, we'll take it, right?
Yeah.
I'll
run one in San Diego for sure.
Yeah, I think maybe, just to nail something on the head right now, I think we say, let's just make it the first version. You pick the amount of places to go, and they have to visit them, rather than spending time in a hex. So you could set a course. In theory, the course wouldn't have to be done in any particular way, but you could say, hey, go to London and visit Big Ben.
Okay.
That's the kind of event. So, like Kenny said, in his small village, he could say that could be the corner shop, that could be the local hospital, and things like that, or something, just to test it.
Yeah, and we could probably do it with Res 9s to start, right? Because those are smaller than Res 8s. Yeah. That's like a couple blocks of a neighborhood. Okay, so
well, in theory, like as the back-end system we've written for TrackPack, it has no idea on hexes. But what we generally got is geofences. So if your GPS is in that that circle, then you've done the task. So it could be hexes. That would probably need another developer or another couple of developers to help me with. So,
okay,
yeah.
I'm seeing Travis is immediately getting geeky here. Dude, that guy knows so much. I don't know what any of these are. The only word I know in there is using.
So that's the kind of system that we run for TrackPack, DynamoDB. Lambda is where you run functions. So, for example, have I entered a geofence? That's a function that runs on Lambada. And then the gateway API is like where you would say like save that I visited here.
Okay.
They're just like layers on Amazon that basically mean that your costs are next to nothing. But at the same time, if a billion people suddenly decide to use your app the next day, it would just work.
Yeah. Huh. Because it can scale. Okay. So
Yes.
the way it looks then, Neil, if I'm hearing it right, is there's a couple things. Actually, there should be a link in the description to sign up for an email list. So if you are interested in this, if you heard anything in this where you're like, oh, I could totally help out with that, like I think that's the first start. And I'll get with you, Neil, after this, and we'll like kind of lay out like, hey, these are the 3 things we're looking for, or whatever it is, and I'll blast it out to the list and connect them with you. That's probably the first way to start. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, exactly. I think that anyone wants to help out and just contribute a little bit of time to talk over these ideas is just as helpful as someone that's a full-time coder that can throw a bit of code in, you know.
Yep.
And I think, you know, we really need to lock down the lovable part of this app. You know, whenever I say about app building, it's the lovable part.
Right.
There has to be a feature that keeps them coming back. And if that once you do that a few times, it becomes a habit, and then they're using that game on the daily. But we have to have something lovable there. So even things like playtesting, we're going to need to do. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty interesting, Laura.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep,
because you can just
exactly.
sit there and you're like, I'm going to smash my button on the tab 1,000 times, which is great for Helium. It's funny for you. Doesn't cost a bunch. You know?
My one thing with that would be that if you have your mapper at home, you'd suddenly tell everyone where you live.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's where you're going to spend the most DC.
Yeah. Huh.
Oh, someone definitely lives here.
And I wonder if you could, I mean, you have to be able to say when you join the app, right, when you go to herebdragons.trackpack.com or whatever it ends up being, is you're like, hey, I want a geofence outside of my house, you know, and that's like a minimum res 8 or something like that. So you can't hit anything within the res 8 around your house. I guess that would suck if you live next to Big Ben and you want to collect that. But something
Yeah,
like that.
I play a game that's recently like that. It creates like a homebound square, and you can Coinly it's called, and you earn something for being in that square for a bit longer. So maybe there's something that we could do there about, you know. But we do have to be careful with the game. Travis is right. If you allow anyone to just set up a route, that route could be somewhere dangerous. So it does need content moderation, and it does need some sort of approval to make sure it's not just, you know, taking people to the wrong parts of town and stuff like that. You know?
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So, because there's got to be some waiver where you're like, hey, you're an adult. You should look at this shit before you do it.
Exactly. I mean, you hear crazy stories all the time of people's GPS is taking them down the wrong streets or narrow streets that they should be down and getting stuck because they're not meant to go down there. So, you know, it's the same sort of thing here that people will just blindly follow and not check. So it needs some sort of moderation to make sure it's not an impossible task or a dangerous task, you know.
Yeah, I think Lee and I were talking about it last night, or maybe it was us, Neil, where we were saying like someone's going to put a hex on top of Everest. It's like, well, be careful collecting that one.
Oh, well, no, it's been a big thing of ours. Like, I think there's some tokenomics to this idea. There's definitely some tokenomics to mapping and improving the network by doing it. And that's a big part of it. You know, if I've been to the Eiffel Tower, it'd be great to have an NFT that says I've been there. You know, if I've climbed Mount Everest, I would like an NFT to say there. But maybe you can do some crazy tasks like, I don't know, certain buildings or certain areas that most people don't normally go to, and it's quite a challenge that you get a reasonable bounty for doing it.
Yeah, like center of CIA headquarters or something. Like, I was in Fort Meade in NSA, like, on the 3rd level or whatever it is. Yeah, that'd be funny. Huh. Okay, cool. So I think what I'll do then, Neil, is we've got a Here Be Dragons channel on the GK server. I'll just move that into the public because it's just been a couple of us kind of brainstorming on that. And then I'll put a link to that from the email so you can find it. And then we'll just kind of drive it from there, but aim for like the first minimum lovable product, the MLP.
Yeah, exactly. And that MLP can be quite quick, you know, once you set up the functions and once you've got the system like we've already developed for TrackPack, we can just literally use that to do all the proof of location. We got some really cool fun stuff as well, which means that we could, in theory, make a tracker that lasts for years and years and years at a time. So you could just have it on your keys or something like that, so you're always playing.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big detraction from games like Pokemon Go or Ingress or things like that. They would just use your battery so quickly.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, Pokemon Go was a great one. It killed your battery a lot, but then eventually they brought something out that you just automatically scans it when you go past and you wear it on your watch, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That really saved people's battery life. But here, we're walking around with devices that can last weeks at a time, depending on use, sometimes months, sometimes years. So
Yeah.
we can have a really, really fun game that you're always playing. I'd love to play a game that just I look on it and it would show me all of the hexes I've visited, and I've got my NFT all over the show. I'm signing up to 𝐍𝐎𝐴 Dragons London, and I know I'm going to be doing a puzzle route and
Oh yeah, and it'd be. I would totally do this. Is like State of the Network. We'd start the show with like, hey, here's the last week in 𝐍𝐴 Dragons. Here's like the leaderboard. So just show it off so you get some exposure.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you want to like run your business and you want to get kind of free advertising, it's like, oh, I'm going to get it on there by doing some work. Let's see. Hacks followed his GPS to the wrong side of the tracks. All right, be careful.
Yeah.
Noted there. And then Anthony had this thing I brought up earlier. I got to make sure I understand this. Why don't you tie an NFT to so many validations? So like the more time you spent there, the better the NFT?
Yeah, exactly that. I think there's some great possibilities for it to be this game to exist on something like Solana with NFTs, and maybe you get a base NFT, and when you visit the Eiffel Tower, because it's such a well-known place, you can have an upgrade for your NFT and it becomes a super shiny or something. But
yeah. You get like a little crown on it. Yep, totally.
Yeah, that's not my forte. But if you are a games developer and you are out there and you want to help us think about some of these ideas and lock it down, then yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I think that'd be really, really fun if there's some sort of like Tamagotchi style monster to this, that you, by completing these tasks, you upgrade them and bits and pieces like that.
Yeah, so here's this thing, Anthony, I'm psyched to see you talk about this. This starts to be like kind of, I think initially the easiest way to do this, and this idea is definitely like a few steps beyond MLP, but you start having kind of friend groups where you trust everyone in there, and maybe it's everyone on the whatever GK server and the GK crew or in Helium or however you want to do it, and you say this is open to these people, and everybody puts in a little bit of money, and we're like, yeah, the prize we're going for is a ticket to DevCon or ticket to whatever.
Exactly that. I mean, so, you hear about it happening all the time. I mean, it happens on the UK television and stuff. Like they'll just turn up somewhere and say, "Hey, I'm here. Come find me." And this is like kind of taking it out of that realm and doing it in the real world.
God bless Travis. Yeah, you could have a meatpacking NFT.
Well, that's the thing with the kind of capture the hex thing. I thought my idea was to put NFTs on the hex to display it as a kind of game of million pixels kind of idea. But
yeah,
that's going to be abused.
Yeah,
is that a bad thing if people are having fun using the Helium network?
Yeah, no,
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. So it was likely to get abused a little bit, but I think we can have a really good fun game out of it.
Yeah,
definitely one of the best in real life games.
Yeah. No, I'm imagining
Huge.
Like I would totally compete to crush on some of these mapping games, especially if it involved like human transport and it was like running and whatever, flying and sailing and whatever. Like, I would totally want to do this.
Exactly. Yeah, and you could set a course of the runner the hikers
hike and fly
paradise
stuff,
or something. Yeah, they have to do this certain route, and on that route they have to take a picture from XYZ point and upload it and bits and pieces like that, different tasks along the way.
Yep.
So they can make it a bit more enjoyable and have some fun.
Yeah, and thinking about like, you could put an NFT out in the middle of the water, which most of the time is like, well, who cares? But all of a sudden it's like, you got to swim or get a boat out there. Like you got to get your mapper out there to collect that NFT or that hex.
I think Red Sky's quite an interesting idea, is to use that photo as the NFT. So when they go to that area and take that photo, it could become the NFT that they store in their timeline, in their achievements.
Cool. I hadn't understood it that way. I think that's what he meant. A picture to NFT. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, yeah. And then thinking too, like, just to make it a little more viral, is like when you post that picture, it also goes on some Here Be Dragons Twitter account or Instagram account or whatever. So like that thing is constantly getting a feed of content, and people are seeing it. Yeah,
Exactly that.
yeah.
I mean, it just sounds fun to me. I've wanted it for a while. I know there's going to be some sort of 5G game, I think,
Maybe.
but really, this would be crazy to crack out in a couple of weeks or months to have a first version and test it, just to see what people's reactions are. Right?
Do you think we could have it by Christmas? Like, what would it take?
To be honest with you, the basic game probably a week if we
Okay.
wanted to.
Yeah.
The problem is that I'm
You're
so
tapped.
busy with track.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm so busy with track pack, like it's just taking up all my time. I'm in a promo mode at the minute where I'm doing video and recording a lot of video and things like that. But
Yeah.
so I've got some time. But yeah, people are devs out there that want to help out do this thing to purely for the aim to make a fun game and grow the network usage. And we'd love to have the help, right?
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'll make the channel public. I'll put a link to it. If you sign up for the email, you'll get the invite to it. And then maybe we'll do like a revisit of this convo in a week and see where we are and what's happened. Or 2 weeks or whatever. Like, no,
Sure.
we don't have to take up a Saturday every time.
Proof of life. Yeah, I mean that's the one thing that worries me about this is that Pokemon Go was such a success that people worked out how to GPS spoof it and run it on all sorts of things. So, to do a first beta with open hardware and everything, I think that's fine. But if we were to go serious at this, I think we would need to walk away with it with our own kind of like game tracker.
Yeah, I think that's the neat thing too, though, is that you can do stuff that Helium, kind of the community, can't do because you can move super fast because you're basically just taking the info and running it through your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got some different options. I wonder if we get Star Watcher on this. Like, hey, dude, what do you want to incentivize here? Because that guy's super geeky.
Exactly. I'm not sure what that comment means. Big time, the apps are already there in both app stores.
Might be some like app thing we talked about. So this chat is a little bit behind. So we got this. Laura, Global Ingress campaigns. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be connected hexes. I think that's a really fun game mode as well. Like, you've got this great big Res 4. You have to hit the hexes in a pattern to unlock it. And
Yeah. Remember people were drawing pictures with. Remember all the gamers were drawing pictures in China.
Mycelium.
Yeah.
You've got a mycelium in the US somewhere, haven't they? Big N.
Yep. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that'd be
exactly.
super fun.
Connect the hexes somehow, and they win a prize if they go cross country, or I don't know, something.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, Anthony. I think this kind of gets everybody's juices flowing as far as like, hey, this is so. Let's back up before we kind of wrap this thing up. This is the kind of stuff that I think both Neil and I and all of you on that call want to see. Is how do we take the thing that we've all now built, this global network, and transition from kind of solely putting up hotspots to earn HNT to using the network to do something useful, fun, entertaining, kind of in some way super enjoyable. Because a lot of us have had a ton of fun building this thing, but if all you do is just build it and walk away, not really that useful. And I think this is where we're starting to see this transition.
And we know that firsthand from the Here Be Dragons London event. Everyone come back with smiles on their face. Twitter was full of photos of people posing with devices, and everyone just had a really good time. So we could do that on a global scale and mean that you might meet some other people that are in Helium that you've only ever met online.
Yeah,
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I think there's a link in the description. Sign up for the email. Get on the list, and then let us know how you can help out. I think the email thing is like, hey, I want to play a game. I want to be a developer. I want to set a course. Like, there's a couple options to tell us a little bit more about what you want to do, and we'll crush and see if we can get something out. I don't know if I can promise by Christmas, but pretty soon. And really, it depends. Like, not on Neil and me, but on other people stepping up and saying, yeah, I'll put an hour or two into this, or I'll put 10 hours or whatever. Like, we can make this thing work. This could be a super fun thing for Helium and the ecosystem.
Exactly that. And there's so many jobs. There are so many jobs. Just because you're not a coder, don't think you can't help out. Really, we're going to need things like a website or copywriting and social media and so much to it. So really, if you would like to take part, just come take part.
Oh, that's super cool. I hadn't even thought of that because Yeah. There's totally social media. There's illustration. There's NFT stuff. There's tie into salon. Like there's, I don't know, 30 different slots that could be super cool in the sense that maybe you've never done anything like this professionally before. Maybe you've never run a social media campaign, or you've never coded, or you've never done whatever. Like, this is your chance to try it out, because there's very little risk, right? You're not
Exactly. There's not a lot of skin in the game funds wise. You know, if it fails, it doesn't matter. You know, we've had fun along the way.
yeah
That's the end of it. There's no hope that, you know, it's going to do ridiculous things for us. It's just, can we have fun with using the Helium network?
yeah, love it. Ripping, Neil. I think that's a great place to finish up. Is there anything else that you wanted to hit? I think we got most of the stuff that was on my list.
No, that's it.
Okay, cool. Thanks, dog. I will see you guys later. I'll see you on State of the Network next week. But thanks for brainstorming live and in public. Rock and roll. We out.
Bye.